The crisp morning air carried the faint scent of blooming flowers as the sun cast its golden rays over the historic palace grounds. Tourists from all corners of the world gathered, their cameras poised, eager to witness the iconic changing of the guard ceremony. The rhythmic march of polished boots echoed through the courtyard, a symphony of discipline and tradition. The royal guards, clad in their immaculate red coats and towering bearskin hats, stood like statues, their faces stoic, their eyes fixed forward. They were the embodiment of duty, loyalty, and an unbreakable commitment to the crown. But on this particular morning, something extraordinary was about to unfold. Amidst the sea of eager faces, a 74-year-old woman named Eleanor Ellie Harper moved with quiet determination. Her silver hair glinted in the sunlight, and her eyes, though aged, sparkled with a mix of hope and trepidation. She wasn't there to take photos or marvel at the spectacle. She had come for one reason only: to find him. Her heart raced as she scanned the line of guards, her gaze lingering on each face until she finally saw him. There he was, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing green eyes and a jawline that could cut glass. He stood rigidly, his rifle held firmly in his hands, his expression unreadable. To the world, he was just another guard, a symbol of unwavering discipline. But to Ellie, he was so much more. This was her grandson. The weight of the moment pressed down on her like a tidal wave. She had waited for this day for over 30 years, ever since her daughter Sarah had passed away, leaving behind a baby boy Ellie had never been allowed to meet. Sarah had been young, unmarried, and pressured by circumstances to give her child up for adoption. Ellie had fought to keep him, but the system had been against her. For decades, she had searched, following leads that led to dead ends, clinging to the hope that one day she would find him. And now, here he was, standing just feet away from her. Her hands trembled as she clutched the small locket around her neck, a locket that contained a faded photo of Sarah holding her newborn son. Taking a deep breath, Ellie stepped forward, weaving through the crowd. Gasps rippled through the onlookers as she crossed the invisible boundary that separated the guards from the public. A palace official moved to intercept her, but Ellie was undeterred. She had come too far to be stopped now. As she approached the guard, her eyes locked onto his. She noticed the faint scar above his right eyebrow, a scar she knew all too well. Sarah had told her about it in a letter, written just days before she passed away. He fell while learning to crawl, Sarah had written. He's so brave, Mom, he didn't even cry. The memory brought tears to Ellie's eyes. This was him. This was her grandson. She stepped closer, her heart pounding in her chest. The guard remained motionless, his expression unreadable, but Ellie saw the flicker of curiosity in his eyes. She leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper, and uttered the 3 words she had rehearsed 1,000 times. I'm your grandmother. For a moment, nothing happened. The guard didn't move, didn't react, but then, ever so slightly, his grip on his rifle tightened. His chest rose and fell in a shallow breath, and his jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. It was the smallest of reactions, but to Ellie, it was everything. He had heard her. He knew. Before she could say another word, a palace official stepped forward, his hand gently but firmly guiding her away. Ma'am, you need to come with me, he said, his tone polite but firm. Ellie's heart sank. She turned back to the guard, her eyes pleading. Please, she whispered, just say something. But he remained silent, his face a mask of stoic professionalism. As she was led away, Ellie felt a surge of panic. Had she ruined her only chance? Had she pushed too hard? But then, just as she was about to be escorted inside the palace, she saw it. The guard blinked, a tiny, almost imperceptible action, but one that broke protocol. Royal guards weren't supposed to react, not even to blink, but he had. And in that moment, Ellie knew. He had heard her. He had understood. Ellie sat in a small, dimly lit room inside the palace, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The official who had escorted her away had left her alone, leaving only the hum of a security camera for company. Her mind raced as she replayed the moment over and over in her head. She had come so close to reaching him. Would they let her see him again? Or would they send her away, back to the life of longing and unanswered questions she had lived for so long? She reached into her pocket and pulled out the locket, opening it to reveal the faded photo of Sarah and her baby boy. Tears welled in her eyes as she traced the image with her finger. I'm so sorry, Sarah, she whispered. I tried so hard. The door creaked open, snapping Ellie out of her thoughts. She looked up, her breath catching in her throat. Standing in the doorway was the guard, her grandson. He was still in his uniform, his posture rigid, but his eyes betrayed a storm of emotions. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, finally, he took a step forward. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice low and hesitant. Ellie nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered. "It's true." He hesitated, his jaw tightening as he processed her words. Then, slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. It was a picture of Sarah, holding him as a baby. Ellie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "My adoptive parents gave it to me," he said quietly. "They told me it was the only thing they had from my birth mother. I've carried it with me ever since." Ellie's heart shattered and healed all at once. She stood, her legs trembling, and took a step toward him. "I've been looking for you for so long," she said, her voice breaking. "I never stopped, not for a single day." For the first time in his life, the guard, her grandson, let his guard down. His shoulders slumped, and his eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know anyone was looking for me." Ellie reached out, her hand trembling as she placed it on his cheek. "You were never forgotten," she said softly. "Not by me, not by your mother. We loved you every single day." And in that moment, as they stood together in the quiet room, the walls that had separated them for so long began to crumble. The past was painful, but the future was theirs to build. Together. The sun set over the palace, casting a warm glow over the courtyard. Ellie stood at the gates, watching as her grandson resumed his post. He glanced at her, and for the first time in history, a royal guard broke protocol. He gave her the smallest of nods, a nod that said everything. "I see you, I know you, I love you." And for Ellie, that was more than enough. The end.